All right, welcome in. It is time for Full Court Press, the Sweet 16 edition. But quick programming note, if you missed yesterday's show, Matt and I went over the NIT and then the East region of the Sweet 16. So that is up on the Wager Talk YouTube channel on demand. There is still 2 NIT games tonight that we talked about on there. And then the East region, Duke, St. John's, Michigan State, UConn is already done, already clipped up. You may have seen those videos on Twitter at this point. They're on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. So we're not going to talk about those games here. We're going to leave the hour for the other 3 regions. But first, I want to welcome in my co-host, Matthew Winnick, at Matthew Winnick on Twitter. Matt, you know what? You ended up being like pretty much spot on in the NIT. I split last night, but you were all over New Mexico, and they certainly sort of came out in the second half.
Yeah, the St. Joe's hit their shots early, but New Mexico doesn't care. They're going to stick with their plan, and their plan inevitably over 40 minutes, making a bad shooting team take a ton of threes, ended up working overtime. And that's the thing. Like, this is a good lesson to learn just with basketball in general. When we hit late this season and early next season, just because a plan doesn't work in the first half doesn't mean it's the wrong plan.
So I've decided. So Wichita State. I'm going to mark yesterday's parlay as a loss because on the show it was still 3.5. And if you guys remember on the show, I said that I was going to wait until Tulsa got bet as if David Green was playing. I hoped he would be in, and then I would probably take Wichita State. That is exactly what I did for my clients at Wager Talk. I played it at 4.5. It landed 4. So we cashed with that one, but I can't count the show parlay as a win. So, Matt, what I decided to do to make this parlay a 3-teamer is I want to use your leg from yesterday. So can you very quickly just recap what your play was? Because that goes tonight in the NIT.
That was the Dayton, Illinois State over. We've been seeing a lot of overs in the NIT. I don't think that Illinois State can stop Dayton, and I think Illinois State makes enough shots for this to go over.
Yep, so that will be the open leg of our 3-teamer. For the analysis on that, as I said, head over to yesterday's show. It's up on the Wager Talk YouTube channel, and that is where you'll find both of tonight's NIT games, as well as the East region of the Sweet 16. So, without further ado, let's get into the rest of the Sweet 16, and we'll go region by region right here, and I'll actually go day by day. Let's start with the Thursday games. And I'm going to start over in the West region because, again, we're just going to kind of go the first game to tip off of the Sweet 16 is out West. It's Texas and Purdue. And, Matt, I sigh here because I like Texas. I want to be on Texas. I felt like my handicap of Miami was pretty good over the weekend. And of course, the reason that you can tell the sort of, that I'm upset about it is because that Miami bet didn't win. And I felt like I deserved to win, down 4 with 56 seconds left. But at the same time, I guess, a neutral party could look at it and say that knockout punch was kind of always coming. It was kind of right there. And that's kind of what Purdue did at the end of that game. I worry that the same thing happens to me here if I take Texas. It's why I haven't bet it yet. But I wouldn't be that surprised if Texas hung around. So talk to me, Texas, Purdue. This is one I was having trouble with.
Yeah, this is going to be a really, really interesting game because these two teams, and I think this is the case for so many of these games in the Sweet 16, is these two teams play unbelievably differently. And they come from leagues, the SEC and the Big Ten, that play unbelievably differently. And so not only do they play different, but they haven't really played a lot of teams that play like their opponent. So there's not a lot of precedent in terms of how these teams are going to fare. Texas plays, a very, very soft drop coverage. It means they're not going to force pressure on Braden Smith at all. They want Braden Smith to be a shooter. They want him to be a scorer. They want Braden Smith to take 20 shots in this game and have 4 assists. Versus a lot of the games that Braden Smith has played, especially of late, it's the opposite. They're going to send 2 to the ball. They're going to make Braden Smith give it up. What that means is Purdue's going to take a lot of pull-up 2s in this game. Now, Purdue's amazing at doing that, but it's not a very efficient shot. They're not going to get to the rim much. They're not going to take a lot of 3s. They're not going to have a lot of, CJ Cox if he's healthy, Fletcher Lawyer 3s. It's going to be a lot of Smith and Trey Kaufman ran pick and roll over and over and over again. The question is that actually the best thing for Purdue's offense? I actually don't think it is. But on the flip side, Texas loves to get to the free throw line. It's an SEC thing. Everyone in the SEC gets to the free throw line, gets the offensive glass. Those are two things that Texas needs. They need the free throw line. They need offensive rebounding. Purdue is top 30 in the country at defending both. You can't get to the free throw line against them, and you can't get offensive rebounds, which means now the pressure is on Texas to make shots. And if Tremont Mark is off his game, if Jordan Pope isn't hitting threes, Texas has no one that can hit shots. And so this is a matchup where I think that the offense is not going to be put in ideal situations on both sides.
Yeah, I just go to the comments and try to sort of incorporate as many into the show as I can, and I see a good point. It's like, yeah, Slick Vic says, Vokatitis fouls a lot, and, all season that's kind of been an issue. That is a concern, him getting into foul trouble, because that certainly, Texas is not as good with him not on the floor. I guess my other main concern in this game, you talked about Braden Smith. He's typically very good against a drop coverage like Texas is going to play. I go back to the Miami game. I thought they did a pretty good job on him in general. He took 12 shots. He was only 3 for 12. So Miami was trying to bait him into what you were saying is shooting the basketball. They turned him over 8 times, and yet Purdue at the end, the dust settles and Purdue still has a double-digit win. And again, I will, I'm going to complain a little bit that, Miami gets it down to 4. There's 56 seconds left. Why are we fouling? Why are we not playing that out? And then I probably cover. But the flip side of that is Miami kind of had to battle back to get back down 4. There was a point in time in the second half where it felt like Purdue could have been up 15-17 and it could have been good night. So while I do think Texas has the athletes and they've had the shot making all tournament so far. They might be asking for a lot here for Texas to stay in this game.
You want a Braden Smith stat? Because Texas is going to, like I said, force him to shoot a bunch of shots in the mid-range because they're not going to pressure him at all. Purdue's 2-3 this year when he takes more than 15 shots. They are 14-1 when he takes less than 10. I promise you he'll take more than 10 shots, and if I were to guess, he will take more than 15 shots. In which case, that is where Purdue is 2-3. They lost to Illinois, Wisconsin, and Ohio State, and they beat Penn State and Alabama.
That's a really good stat, actually. And I think that's fortunately for me here, Matt, as I sort of look at the Sweet 16 as a whole, I have more opinions that that have conviction than I expected to. So it's going to probably be a little bit easier for me to leave this one alone. My number comes out. I'm close to the market. I think it was actually 8.2. I was 8. I was Purdue minus 8.2 here. So at 7.5, I don't think I'll have any involvement with Texas. And I made the mistake of I was close to the market on the Purdue Miami game. I loved how much that set up for Miami, and seeing Purdue cover and then what they did in the second half, I think is going to scare me off here. So I don't think I'll have anything in this one.
In theory, I do really like the under, but it's 7 to 7.5 points off of KenPom. So you're going to have to really like the under if you want to take it, which I do, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it just because of how far it's off of modeling.
All right, we are going to stay out west, the SAP Center, San Jose, California, the nightcap in this building. Going to be a great game to watch. Definitely one I'm very excited to watch in Arkansas and Arizona. But this is the first of 2 for me, Matt, where I wrote on my notes. I circled these and I wrote, "Don't do it." Okay, that's what I have right next to Arkansas. I said, "Don't do it." My number shows a little Arkansas value. I have been very high on Arkansas this year. Sometimes when you go to a lot of games and see a lot of teams in person, I walked out of the Breslin Center earlier this year and I was just like, oh, I love this Arkansas team. I know they lost this game, but Acuff is just, there's just so much potential here. And I kind of have, I've sort of carried that through the season with me. And actually, it's probably helped me in that regard, because I think Arkansas did sort of blossom into being a team that was like probably better than people thought they were at that point in the year. I also saw Arkansas down in Gainesville when they got run out by 40 because they couldn't guard Florida. And that's where I'll throw this to you. Their defense has been a real issue. High Point got whatever they want against them, and Arkansas was able to will their way to a win. But that is very scary against the Arizona Wildcats, who kind of compare a little bit more to that Florida team that dropped 100 something and probably could have put more if they didn't unload their bench. So talk to me about Arkansas, Arizona. Do you think the Razorbacks have a shot? And where are you at on the number here?
They don't have a chance.
Okay.
If you needed more voices to tell you not to do it on Arkansas, let me be the voice. Don't do it on Arkansas. It's just a bad idea. Arkansas is the worst rim defense in power conference basketball, I think, in the entire country. Like, it's so bad. And the part that's craziest about their rim defense being so horrific is they're 24th in the country in block rate. Like, they block so many shots, and it still doesn't matter. Their rim defense is so unbelievably bad. They allow teams to shoot 61% at the rim, which is a 15th percentile rate and normally left for like the worst teams in the country. The thing with Arkansas is they go for blocks so frequently between Trevon Brazile, Malik Ewan, and Nick Pringle that if they don't get it, it's 2 points if you can get an offensive rebound. And if you pump fake them, they're in the air and then you're scoring. With Arizona playing two bigs at all times, it means that if the first shot doesn't go in, the second shot's going right to the other big. They're going to get so many offensive rebounds. They're going to score so many points. You mentioned the Florida game. Another team that's huge, amazing at the rim, and plays two bigs. They made 31 two-point field goals, and they got 49% of their misses on the offensive glass. If you're going to get half of your misses and make 31 two-pointers, Florida scored 111 points in that game. Arizona will score 100 if that happens. And there's no magic fix for Arkansas because they only play 7 guys, and their best defender, Nick Pringle, is injured and might play, but if he does, it won't be much. The only way Arkansas has a chance here is if Darius Sakoff and Malik Thomas combine for like 65 points, and they might, in which case the game goes over. But if you're telling me which team has a more, efficient and better pathway to points, is it the one that's going to get half of their offensive rebounds and score 60 points in the paint? Or is it the one that has 2 bucket getters and is going to score 60 points off of mid-range pull-up jumpers? Like, I'm going to take the rim team 20 times out of 10.
Yeah, I think what ultimately talked me off of, messing with Arkansas here, and I'll make my point on the number in a second, but, I was at the Florida game. Obviously, I mean, that was as dominant of a performance that you're probably going to ever find. Big national TV game, Saturday night, sellout. Arkansas actually, what's even more ridiculous about that game, Arkansas actually kind of dominated the first 8 minutes. There was a point in time where Todd Golden had to call a timeout because Arkansas went up like 16-12. They had more energy than Florida. And he called a timeout, and they were actually down. I think it was 16-10 or 16-12. And that game turned into a 40-point blowout. And so that just to kind of put it in perspective, but the Arkansas has suddenly played a very easy week schedule of late, right? Like, they drew a really good first round matchup in Hawaii that didn't press them at all. They had the benefit of High Point pulling the upset, so they didn't have to face Wisconsin. The SEC tournament, Ole Miss and Oklahoma, not great team. The Vandy win is solid, but and I even made, so I'll give you my second point, and then you can kind of wrap this up. I said, okay, Arkansas, when we talked about Arkansas High Point last week, I said, I prefer Arkansas in the underdog role. That's where I'd rather have them. I actually lean toward High Point. I think I gave out High Point on the show, plus the points. I said, I don't want this team as an 11-point favorite. I prefer them as the underdog. Here, my number was 6.5. So on the open at 8.5, that showed value. Now, I didn't bet it because I still have a brain, and I was, I'm not just going to blindly bet my numbers. But the final point I'm going to make before I throw this back to you is I do think the market is sort of betting this the way that my number is suggesting to bet this. 8.5 down to 7.5 a lot of places. So my question to you is this the point where you're punching back? Is this as good as it's going to get? If you like Arizona, should you be hopping on 7.5 right now?
Yeah, I mean, it might get better, but I think you're getting value on the price given Ken Palm has it 8, and I think this is a great matchup for Arizona specifically, just outside of the number. The other thing here is like there's going to be so many points, and obviously the total is in the mid 160s, so that's going to be expected. I would say that like the natural inclination is like, oh, take the over, but I just think that Arizona is a safer side because like when I'm thinking about what's safest, I'm always going to think about which team has the rim advantage because there's no variance in rim attempts. Like you're either good at the rim or you're not good at the rim. You're either going to get to the rim, you're not going to get to the rim. You either have good rim defense or you don't. And Arizona gets to the rim and Arkansas has bad rim defense. You don't have fluctuations in shooting percentage on layups. You either make them and you get them or you don't. And so Arizona does. With Arkansas, it's going to come down to whether Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas are unbelievable or not. You think about that Alabama-Arkansas game that went to 2 overtimes that was 117 to 115 in double overtime. It was insane. Alabama should have won that game by 30. They shot 72% at the rim, but Darius Acuff was so unbelievable that Arkansas actually just had a chance. To my point, it took a 49-point performance from Darius Acuff for Arkansas to have a chance and still lose. So the safest play here is Arizona in my mind. I know a lot of people are going to like the over, and like I do too. But if I'm deciding between the two, it's just a safer bet to take Arizona against the spread.
All right. We'll move on. Joe, and again, I'll probably talk about this a couple times throughout the show. St. John's Duke, we did that one yesterday, as well as UConn, Michigan State. So if you're watching the show, because it's labeled Sweet 16 and you're looking for the East region, that is up on the Wager Talk YouTube channel as part of Tuesday's show. But also those individual games are already on the Wager Talk YouTube channel as well. So you should be able to find those clipped. And we did full breakdowns for those yesterday. All right, I am going to transition to the Midwest because I want to go to the other. So I said, don't do it on my notes. You just confirmed. I'm probably going to put a big black line through that one after we, because I'm kind of with you there. But this one, you're going to have to do a better job of talking me off this one because this one I have a little bit more conviction toward, at least being like a more viable option. And so let's go to the Midwest. Let's go to Chicago, Illinois, the United Center. My number likes Alabama here. And again, I put don't do it because I guess I know what the bad could be here if the threes aren't falling. But this is the one where, like, if you were to look at those two games, Bama, Michigan, Arkansas, Arizona, like, to me, the more likely that a team just goes absolutely nuts and shoots their way to like a huge upset win would be this game with Bama hoisting up. They might shoot 53s here, Matt. They might jack up 53s in this game. I think they'll shoot more than 40. My question to you is that sort of crazy variance worth a shot, getting 10 points? And I might even sprinkle something on the money line just for the hell of it, just because if they are falling, I think they have a chance to win.
You're 100% right, especially with that money line perspective. I think that you're right. Alabama can take so many threes that if they hit them at 40%, like they did against Texas Tech, where they looked completely unbelievable. Like, look at that Texas Tech game. I actually think that Texas Tech, in a vacuum, especially without Aiden Holloway, even without JT Toppin, I think Tech was the more talented team. And Texas Tech had made more free throws, and they shot better from 2-point range. But Alabama shot 45% from 3, and Texas Tech shot 16% from 3. And if that happens against Michigan, Alabama will win. And you're 100% right. To the point where I just think taking a stab at the money line makes more sense in the spread, because if Alabama doesn't make 40% of their threes, I don't see how they compete, given they don't have Aiden Holloway. They're not good on the glass. They don't force any turnovers, and they foul too much. So with Michigan, I'm always worried about them against teams that pressure them, that send 2 to the ball, because they turn it over too much, and they're just so dominant, like physically, that if you give them one-on-one matchups, they're going to find the best one and take advantage. If Daimara has a good matchup, he'll post you up. Axel Endeborg has a small guy on him, he'll drive him downhill. If he has the big guy on him, he'll shoot over him. With Alabama, because of the way that they play with Nate Oates, like they're never, ever, ever going to double team anything unless they absolutely have to. And because of that, Michigan's just going to find the best matchup and expose it. And there's going to be good matchups because Alabama plays small and Michigan plays huge. So I think in a vacuum, like the number moving towards Michigan makes sense. At the same time, like you mentioned, in a variance game where Alabama is going to take 65% of their shots from three, if they hit them again, I think to that BYU game last year where they had like the best three-point shooting game in March Madness history, it's possible that happens. In which case, you'll look really smart with an Alabama money line ticket. But I'm not sure if there's as much value on the spread.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what I sort of came to in my head was it's what's the harm in taking a small crack at like a big money line, double-digit dog? Whereas like when you start to look at it against the minus 110 and okay, now, yeah, like obviously you have a much better chance of hitting your bet on the 10.5 or the 10, but the flip side, it'll be easier to stomach if the threes aren't falling for Bama and they're quickly down 20-25 and the game is over. Well, you just had a small play on the money line, whereas it's like you're sitting there with like a big bet on or a standard bet on plus 10 and they get down huge like that. I don't know if Bama even comes back from that. Like I think they have to start maybe Bama first half a little bit, because I think if they don't start hot and they start chasing big time, like they're chasing double digits early, that concerns me for Alabama here.
Yeah, for sure. And then you also just like think about how some of these games have gone. I know you've been on the wrong side of a couple of them with just like late game foul extension, game 7 with a minute and a half left, and the next thing you know, it's 13. So
yeah, that is true, and it's worth pointing out. Like I know it's sort of it gets beat to death at this time of a year, but it's like it is worth pointing out that like it's the game extension in the NCAA tournament when your season's over. So it's like, it makes sense that everyone is going to foul until the very last second. Why wouldn't you? Maybe, why wouldn't you? Crazy.
Even in the NIT, there's a world in which New Mexico doesn't cover, but St. Joe's didn't let them not cover with how many times they fouled down 10.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really good point, and it has made it difficult to, you're taking like that's the thing. Like if you take a big underdog or any underdog, I guess we'll say a big underdog where you're in the extension range where it's like, okay, if you're taking a 2.5 point underdog, you kind of are taking them with the expectation you're going to win.
Yes.
But, if you're taking a 7-point dog, an 8-point dog, a 10-point dog, like you are sort of banking on a close game. And there's been quite a few scenarios. Go back, even Arizona last round, getting up and over 11.5 was, there's been quite a few where the end result of who got the money maybe wasn't indicative of betting the right side or not.
Now that said, and this is a whole other conversation I won't go too deep into, there are coaches and teams that are good late game foul extension teams and some that are bad. And anecdotally, Nate Oates is a very, very good one because a lot of teams make the mistake of going 2s for 2s, as in they shoot a quick layup, then foul again, the team makes free throws, and they're just playing the same game. Alabama will never shoot a 2 in that situation. They're going to shoot only 3s, and they make so many 3s that it is the math is in their favor in a late game foul extension situation. So unlike some teams where it's like, this makes no sense, there is a world where Michigan's up like 12, Alabama does do the late game foul extension, and it turns into 7 real quick, and then that's where it ends. Very anecdotal, but that is a team that I would want to be backing in a late game foul extension situation.
So my final question to you here on this game before we move on, I'm looking at the odds logic screen, and I'm seeing quite a few books go to 10.5 here. Is there a number where you get involved with Alabama, or are you just?
I think it's too much variance. I don't think I want to take a chance. And like at this total, I do kind of lean under, but in the same realm of not wanting to take the dog, it's just, what if Alabama makes 45% of their threes and the under looks so stupid? If they hit 20% of their threes, it's going to fly under by 20 points. It's one of those where it's like, maybe if one thing's happening at halftime, do the other. Like even though I was on New Mexico yesterday, when Derek Simpson hit 4 straight threes at halftime, I was like, well, there's way too much value in New Mexico. I'm going to double down here. If one of the teams is red hot from 3, or one of the teams is ice cold from 3, just try the other side at halftime. It's probably going to work out.
All right. So I didn't set it up this way, but we just kind of we're halfway through. But for me, those were the 3 I had much lesser opinions on. So I think we're getting to the good ones, at least for me, the ones that I'm much more sort of like, I guess, close to making a move in at this point. And of course, we'll lock in. We've already decided the first leg of the show parlay is going to be Matt's NIT play for later tonight, which we'll recap at the end. The other 2 legs will come from the Sweet 16. So the games we talked about yesterday are fair game. I know you and I both kind of, sort of talked about UConn being an option in that game. I want to go to the nightcap on Thursday out in the Midwest. I'm sorry. We're back on Friday. Sorry. This is Friday it doesn't really matter what days because we're doing all the Sweet 16 games, but this is Friday. This is the Midwest. Iowa State last round against Kentucky. Just from a market standpoint here, Matt, Kentucky took respected money Saturday into Sunday, obviously tied to Josh Jefferson probably not playing, right? And the spread came down from 6. I think it got down as low as 4.5. There was a little bit of buyback, and then the quote unquote sharps, or I guess syndicates that would move the number, slammed Kentucky pretty late, like to post in that game. I could not get down with that. And the reason was, well, I keep going back. What I had in my head was you being like, is this team good at anything? Is Kentucky good at anything?
I'm glad.
And I was like, man, yeah, it was in my head. It was stuck in my head. I was like, they're not. And they're probably going to turn the ball over a ton. And Iowa State will probably still win anyway. And that is pretty much exactly what happened. But boy, that first 10 minutes or so didn't look great for Iowa State. And for me, it's like, I think Tennessee could force Iowa State into more minutes that look like that than Kentucky was able to. And if Jefferson doesn't play here, which I think it's crazy to think that he will, Tennessee is in this game, in my opinion. And that 4.5 starts to look quite appealing. So talk to me, Iowa State, Tennessee. Do you think the Vols have a chance, or is it too much Iowa State defense?
I think it's probably too much Iowa State defense, and specifically the way that Iowa State plays defense, in which they're going to double anytime you drive and anytime you set a screen, and your lead creator is going to have a nightmare day because he's going to be doubled constantly and not be able to get off clean looks. With Kentucky, they didn't even have a lead creator. They didn't have a point guard, and that's why the turnover rate was so high. So Tennessee is not going to turn it over quite as much. But what is going to happen is Jacoby Gillespie is not going to get a lot of shots off, because not only is TJ Otzelberger a smart defensive coach who's going to understand that Jacoby Gillespie is Tennessee's only offense, their defense is built to take away the opposition's point guard. And Gillespie is the reason why Tennessee's looked so good through 2 rounds. He has 50 points in 2 games, 15 assists to 6 turnovers. What happens when, instead of being able to take 15 shots or 21 shots in a game, he's going to take 8 or 9 shots, and they're all going to be contested, and he's going to be doubled the entire time he's on the floor? Is Nate Ament good enough to make up for that? Is anyone else on Tennessee actually a third option? Because as of right now, there isn't. And if there's one team left in the field I don't want to see have to go down their pecking order of scoring options, it's Tennessee. And that's what Iowa State does better than any team in the country. So if you're telling me that this is, even if it's Josh Jefferson-less Iowa State, I just don't see how Tennessee scores.
So I would be really kicking myself if I took Tennessee and it played out the way that you're talking about, because I've probably said on this show, God, you could go back to the game that Tennessee lost up here at the Dome. I think since that night, I was like, what is this offense, right? Like, you have 2 guys, and outside of Gillespie and Amen, you really don't have like any consistent scorers. And I've sort of that's sort of been my stance all year. So I think for me, it's like, I had it in my head, okay, after Iowa State smashes Kentucky, because they probably will, I'll look to oppose them in the next round. But I would have probably been better served getting Virginia here than Tennessee, I think, for like from a matchup standpoint. And so that is ultimately what probably keeps me off is the fact that like I've said that way too many times on the show to then come on here and go against it. And yeah, I think you need like Gillespie 21, 29, 21, his last 3 games. He's played awesome. Part of a big criticism for me with Tennessee earlier this year was that he was not playing up to the level of like the power conference sort of star guard, but he's definitely done that now. But yeah, the supporting cast still leaves a lot to be desired. You probably need a generational rebounding performance from Tennessee for them to win this game. As we talk it out, I'm like, oh, they're going to need to get every rebound, second chance points, and Gillespie's still probably going to need to have his 4th straight game of 20 plus for Tennessee to win this game.
And I don't see a world where Gillespie gets 20 points unless it takes him 20 shots to get there, which it might. I would say the way that I'm looking at this game is I'm going to wait. I'm not going to touch it until we know about Joshua Jefferson. I agree. I don't think he's going to play, but he might. And my perspective is if Jefferson plays, I will take Iowa State. And if Jefferson doesn't play, I will take under, because I don't want to take Tennessee, but I don't want to take Iowa State without Jefferson. I think that without Jefferson, Iowa State's offense is in a bigger problem than its defense, especially against a team that doesn't turn it over too much and has really good guard play. So I would go under if Jefferson is out.
Question for you. How do you think this number 4.5, does that have him in or out in your opinion?
Without Jefferson?
Like, are they pricing him in or out with the opener being 4.5 in your opinion?
I think they're pricing him in, because you saw that
too.
Kentucky number move 3 points off, and yeah, Iowa State played pretty well, but I wouldn't say they played so well that it makes the market feel like it's a 3-point, I guess buyback on Jefferson-less Iowa State. So I would have to assume that if they thought for sure Jefferson wasn't going to play, this would not be above KenPom.
Yeah, like I see, that's the thing. I think he's priced in there as well. And so when I refer to my number, I was making a number with him out. And so that's why I showed a little bit of value on the Tennessee side, because my Iowa State minus 2.4 was with him out. So yeah, and again, I don't think he's going to, like, if you want my personal gut feeling, I don't think he's going to play.
Me too. I agree.
But so again, I mean, if you're just kind of like hunting some value and you want to take a 4.5 with the thought process that, okay, I'll try to middle this. I'll try to come back later once he's ruled out and Tennessee gets slammed, and then just take Iowa State. That you could do that. But yeah, I mean, again, I think that personally is why I gravitate toward Tennessee, thinking that, that 4.5 number is going to probably be value. But then again, a lot of people had good numbers with Kentucky on Sunday, over on Sunday, and didn't matter. Your 6 with Kentucky did not matter. So
I just think if you're going to give me, like, at the end of the day, this is scheme versus players, because Iowa State is the better scheme, especially defensively, but Tennessee is the 2 most, in theory, talented offensive players in Gillespie and Ament. I just trust Iowa State to be able to scheme those 2 guys out and make everyone else on Tennessee beat them.
All right, we have one region left, and for me, it is from a betting standpoint, I think this is the most in not the most interesting, but certainly like probably the most of like where I'm leaning toward. Well, aside from the games we talked about the other day, where I'm leaning toward probably having action, and so this one has moved a little bit, which might keep me off. But let's start with Iowa, Nebraska. We are now in Houston, where the Cougars later that evening will have a home game, or kind of a home game, Toyota Center. But we're going to start with a Big Ten battle first. Nebraska, Iowa, these teams have played each other. And my initial reaction was that 2.5 with Iowa kind of looks nice. I made Iowa a small favorite on the number. These teams know each other well. I think I don't know if it's possible for Ben McCollum to have a better game plan than he did against Florida, but I could see him game planning for Nebraska. He's seen him before. So talk to me about this one. I made Iowa a 1.5 favorite. It looks like the market is starting to agree with me. Where are you at on Iowa, Nebraska?
The complete other way, actually. I make Nebraska a 2-possession favorite. Well, slightly over 1 possession favorite.
I'm glad. I don't want to take a bad number, so I'm happy to hear that. Go ahead.
I think that Ben McCollum, I think this number moving towards Iowa is just the market believing in Ben McCollum. And Ben McCollum's amazing. But what Ben McCollum's amazing at is dictating the tempo and dictating the game in the way that he wants to play it. Florida was a polar opposite team as Iowa. And because of that, because Ben McCollum is so great at making you play his way, Florida was so uncomfortable playing Iowa style. Not only is Nebraska comfortable playing Iowa style, but they've done it twice. And the way those two games played out so differently. Yes, Iowa took Nebraska to overtime at Nebraska, but Nebraska was leading the entire game, was up double digits late, and Iowa made a super late comeback to send it to overtime and then couldn't hang on. But the most important fact about that second game is that Iowa turned it over 19 times. I unearthed a very, very weird stat. I put together the preview for the South region at Basket Under Review. I would go check out. It makes no sense, but Iowa's 2-9 against power conference teams when they have an assist rate over 58%. That means more than 58% of their baskets are assisted on. And that means they're 13-2 against power conference teams when their assist rate is lower than 58%, which means Iowa is better when they get fewer assists, which in theory makes absolutely no sense. But you know what it means when they get fewer assists? It means more Bennett Sturts. And more Bennett Sturts shots is better for Iowa. Even in a game where he goes 0 of 9 from 3, you want as many Bennett Sturt shots as possible. I don't think it's a coincidence that in Iowa's win over Nebraska, Bennett Sturts took 22 shots and 7 free throws. In their loss against Nebraska, he took 10 shots and 2 free throws, less than half the shots and less than half the free throws. Nebraska's entire scheme is no isolation, double everything, no post-ups, no straight line drives. Make the others beat you. And Iowa's others aren't good. Bennett Sturts didn't get doubled against Florida because Florida doesn't double anything. Nebraska will double everything. And I will take Nebraska being able to play their way, being able to take out Bennett Sturts, and not getting severely outcoached by Ben McCollum because, yes, Ben McCollum does know Nebraska, but Nebraska knows Ben McCollum. And that takes away that coaching edge, and Nebraska's the better team.
Yeah, that's where, that's as you're speaking, that's kind of what, I'm looking down at my notes, and I noted just how slow Iowa got Florida to play in that game, which, sort of how slow and how they were able to like neutralize Florida's biggest advantage, which is of course their front court. And it does seem like it's going to be much harder to do that against Nebraska, the way Nebraska plays. So I purposely, Matt, so first of all, yes, Matt, you can find him on his Twitter handle, which is on your screen, but also at Basket Under Review. If you've watched the show, I've raved about the Basket Under Review site all year. There's still, you just going over, I think it's, like $10 a month to even just get the, get it for March, just to get all the stuff they're going to have on the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final Four is massive. And I purposely did not read your preview yet. I said, I don't want to, and that's why I didn't want to, like subliminally, I purposely didn't read your preview before the show because I wanted to make sure if we had differing opinions, it came out on the show. And I have to say this conversation over the last hour has been very, very helpful to me because I'm sitting here like, man, I got an awfully long list of Sweet 16 games I like. And, I know it's not smart to go into a board of 8 games and bet 6 of them or whatever, right? Like the market is pretty efficient at this point in time. And I'm slowly talking myself off of some of these. And the thing is like this one, they kind of did it for me. I would have only played this at 2.5 for Iowa. Now that it's pretty much 1.5 everywhere, I think you kind of missed your chance for Iowa, but Nebraska's probably going to take that. I could see someone coming in betting Nebraska, and I think you'll have a shot at 2.5 with Iowa. Do you think Iowa gets to 3 at any point? Do you think Nebraska takes that much money?
I don't think that with the way that the market works, like this late in the season with this much action on games, it's going to move that much more after having already moved one way. Like I wouldn't expect so much bounce back with a market like the Sweet 16. I think that the market has made itself known. They know what they want, and that's what they're going to get. The market prefers Iowa. It is what it is at this point. I understand, but Iowa had a really bad end to their season. They lost to Penn State and Maryland. They were not good. And they lost to Ohio State in the conference tournament. And then you get a Clemson team that I think was a very good matchup because Clemson needs to slow teams down, and Iowa was happy with that. They played the slowest game of the entire season. And then you get Florida, and they slowed Florida down to basically nothing and just completely made them uncomfortable. This is not going to make Nebraska uncomfortable. Nebraska will be completely fine here. This is a Big Ten game. Nebraska went 15-5 in the Big Ten. Like, this is fine for them. This is their element. And they're going to have more fans because we've seen Nebraska's traveling like crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, Nebraska, they will, this game being, even in Houston, they'll take, I would imagine it's a lot of Nebraska fans. You're right. They travel they travel better than Iowa, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, I mean, I'll tell you what, when the Iowa girls came with Caitlin Clark to Albany, there was all Iowa fans. They might have just been Albany natives being Iowa fans. Because I was like, man, they really travel here. And yeah, that's an interesting point. And it is a perfect segue into the final game, because you got to think that the Toyota Center is going to be a lot of Houston fans. Houston, what a gift for this team, Matt. Right in their backyard, right in their own city. I don't know that Houston really earned that this year. The ability to have basically a home game in the Sweet 16 in the Elite Eight, but Houston will play this game in Houston against Illinois. And this is one, my number loves Houston here. Showing it is, I am like 6.5 with Houston, which is crazy to me. And again, it's hard to, that's with me trying to wait in some home court, which I do think is maybe worth, it's not the Fertitta Center. You're not going to give them that kind of home court edge, but they're right in their home city. Like, you certainly got to bump them a little bit for home court. The problem is, and I'll go back to a point that I made regarding Houston and let you kind of take it from there. Defensively, not the team they've been in the past couple of years. I think that's what I've noted with Houston at times, where they just aren't that crazy, going to stop you at all cost and totally just wipe you out defensively type team. And I guess I've noted that could be an issue here against Illinois, but I still see some paths to victory here for Houston. So talk to me about this one. Who do you like? Illinois, Houston at the Toyota Center in Houston's backyard.
We're just not agreeing today. We're really not agreeing today. I'm on Illinois. Yes, home court, bit of a thing. Not that it really means much, but Houston only has, this is insane. In the last 9 seasons, Houston has 9 losses in the city of Houston. 1 loss average per year in the city of Houston. And I say that because this game isn't at home. It's in Houston. The Cougars are actually 0-1 at the Toyota Center over that stretch. That doesn't mean anything, but they did lose at the Toyota Center to Auburn last year, 2 Final Four teams. Auburn got the best of Houston there. The thing with Houston is their defense is number 4 in KenPom. Their defense is very good, but it's very, very mediocre against the best offenses they've played. Let me tell you their 7 worst defensive performances this year. By a wide margin, it's those 7 and then a huge gap. BYU, Arizona, Arkansas, Iowa State, Arizona, Tennessee, Texas Tech. AKA all the best teams they've played.
Yeah.
And then you go up all their best performances. It's all of their bye games. It's West Virginia. It's Kansas. It's Baylor. It's all of the inferior offenses they've played. I like the over as well. I like Illinois, and I like the over. For one, Houston's defense is going to be overrated against good defenses because their defensive rating is what it is. And the splits between bad offenses and good offenses is as drastic as you'll see in the country. So given they get Illinois, the number 2 offensive efficiency team in the entire country, I think they're going to score fine here. But the biggest difference in this game for me is Illinois' passing and their shot volume. Houston gets a ton of turnovers and they get a ton of offensive rebounds. But Illinois never turns it over, and Illinois doesn't allow offensive rebounds, and they're the tallest team in the country. So it's very hard to get rebounds over them. If Houston cannot get steals, and if Houston cannot get offensive rebounds, then this is a game of shot making. And I am going to take Illinois' offense with their analytically minded shot profile and their plethora of options over Houston's dribble pull-up offense every day. I like Houston if they can get steals and offensive rebounds, but they're not going to get that in this game. And because they're not going to get that, if you're taking Houston, you're basically saying, I think Houston's going to be better at making shots than Illinois is. And I just don't think that's correct.
So I absolutely can find some merit in the over. Colin Gregory says, I like the over 139.5. I do think I think Houston's going to get the shots that they're able to make. Like, yes. Kingston Flemings probably gets quite a few good mid-range looks. And if he can knock them down, he can absolutely keep them in this game.
Yes.
I guess what I was, because I kind of was shocked, I guess, when I ran the numbers and I'm like, you're probably too far off. Like, making Houston that big of a favorite doesn't really make sense. But like, I do think Houston's going to be able to score maybe more points. Like, Illinois is not going to wipe out Houston, in my opinion, in this game. So I'm kind of with Colin on the over. I could see that over 139.5.
I'm there too. Yeah.
I will say this, like I said, I'm glad. I'm more of I tend to be more selective. I'm not like a board spray type bettor. And so the fact that like I came in with this long list of opinions, now I have a lot to think about. So that is like, I'm actually happy that we had some disagreement, because I got to go back and say, all right. And that's the thing. I think that's anyone, because this is still a, more of a betting show than anything. Like, for me, it's always challenging to sort of take your number and then apply it in the context of like the tournament. It's a neutral floor now. There's so much more public money in the market than there is during the regular season. So books have to make a number anticipating how the masses are going to bet, where they don't have to do that as much during the regular season. Maybe they have to do it in the big games, but typically not going to do it on like the majority of the games that I would be betting, which is probably not the sort of like biggest game on the board. So I think that's an interesting point. And these games should be really tough to bet. Let's put it that way. The Sweet 16, any game the rest of the way should be very difficult to like find a big time edge. So I think it's worked out well.
Yeah, I very randomly had I think sort of randomly had an amazing betting run since March Madness started. Some of that is luck, and I bet way too much. Unlike you,
you were calling final scores on Twitter over the weekend.
I just looked it up now. I've made 62 wagers since Selection Sunday. That's too many.
That's pretty awesome, though. Hey, I mean, listen, some of them are in the NIT, so there's probably a little bit of a bigger edge there. Hey, we got the Crown coming up next week. Quick promo: we will be doing shows. I believe Rob Bino will be back. We will have a Crown preview show, so that'll be coming up next week. So hey, listen, 3 years ago, one of the best betting runs I ever had occurred during March Madness. And then if you're seeing the ball go through, you're hitting your shot, you might as well just keep firing, right? You're not going to get to again until November. So There's no, might as well unload the clip right now if they're falling for you. So with that being said, Matt, we are using your total from yesterday, since the parlay yesterday. Hey, actually, maybe you do have action on your parlay yesterday. That's great if you got 4 or 4.5 with Wichita State. But for the sake of the show, we're going to count yesterday's as a loss, because when we were on the show, Wichita was still 3.5. And And so we will open the 3-teamer with your game for tonight. So if you are looking for a bet for tonight, we did a whole show yesterday on the NIT. We've already broke these games down, but we are going to use Matt's NIT play, which is going to be Illinois State Dayton. Now, my question to you is this. It's moved a little bit since yesterday. Can we go over 140? Is that still okay for that one?
Yeah.
So we are going to go Illinois State Dayton over 140 as leg number 1. Matt, what is your best bet of the Sweet 16? Give us leg number 2 right here.
It's on your screen right now.
Okay. All right. So we're going right back to that. So we got 2 totals in here. So that is going to be over 139.5 Illinois Houston. Yeah, I mean, we just talked about that game, and I'm looking at, there's 140s out there, but yeah, I think 139.5. There's still enough of them where that's a fair number for that game. So 2 totals, and guess what? Even though we disagreed a lot on this show today, we're probably going to agree on my leg because I am going back to yesterday's show, and I'm going to use UConn on the money line as the 3rd leg of our parlay. We broke this game down completely. It's such a good matchup for UConn. I wore my UConn jacket. I know Joey Cheese is watching this show. I know he's like, I couldn't have been more anti-UConn the past couple weeks. But you know what? That is the great part about being a sports bettor and not a fan. We just get to change our mind and decide we're going to ride. We can be anti a team all year, and as soon as the market swings or there's a matchup, we can just go right back to the other team. I love this matchup for UConn. We talked about it yesterday. It is, I think, as good of a matchup as UConn could have asked for of any of the teams remaining pretty much at this point. And I think they're going to win. So I'm going to put the money line in there, which will, I think minus 125 is probably fair. I'm seeing 1.5 most places. So that will be our 3-teamer for the show. UConn on the money line, minus 120 half. UConn on the money line, minus 125. Houston, Illinois. You can tell I've been doing shows for like 2 hours now. My brain is like fried. We did the baseball show. Anyone interested in baseball, we did our first episode of Total Bases earlier, so you can check that out. Myself, Tokyo Brandon, Brian Leonard. Okay, one more time. UConn, money line, minus 125. Houston, Illinois, over 139.5. And then tonight, Illinois State Dayton over minus 140. I got it out. That's the 3-teamer. Matt, before we close out, anything else you want to add that we didn't touch on?
There's no other games. We've really hit it all.
We have hit it all. We've done all 12 games over the last 2 days. Again, I'll say it again. Yesterday's show, if you were looking for Duke, St. John's, Michigan State, UConn, and then the 2 NIT games, Auburn, Nevada, Illinois State, Dayton, those are all broken down in full on yesterday's show. Head on over to the Wager Talk YouTube channel for that replay. While you're over there, like and subscribe. I'll put you on the spot one more time before we sign off. Who wins this tournament? Is there some way you're leaning more than others? Is there a someone that's undervalued that you want to target? Who's your champ?
I think if you want to go undervalued, I mean, we talked about Illinois, Houston. I think if you know who wins that game, you have an underrated national champion, because I think the 2 best teams in the country are Michigan and Arizona, but only one of them can make the national championship game. And Duke is definitely a little bit exposed right now with their short rotation and how they've struggled in the first half of their games. And I don't think Nebraska or Iowa can beat either Houston or Illinois. So if you know who's going to win that game, I think Illinois. I think that there's value on Illinois. If you think Houston's going to win, I think there's value on Houston, because there is maybe, I would say there may be the winner of that game is plus 150 to make the national championship game, in which case you got a lot of value.
Yeah, I could get down with that. I think if you put me on the spot, similarly, I probably would have made the same case for Houston and for a lot of those points. So I think the thought process right there absolutely makes sense. Guys, if you're in survivor pools, your brackets, whatever you got going, good luck with that. Again, we have now hit all 12 games. You've got 6 of them today. Go back to yesterday's show. The other 4 tonight's NIT games, and then the 2 East Region games are on there. Huge shout out to Matt for filling in this week while Rob Vino was on tour. I saw a bunch of the Wager Talk guys went to the show out in Vegas last night. I was super jealous of that. His son's band is awesome. And yeah, we will, if again, total bases tomorrow at 9 a.m. and the rest of the week. And then we will be back for more college basketball stuff on Saturday on Last Call to preview the Elite 8. I will be with Kelly in Vegas on Last Call to do that. Guys, we've appreciated you guys all season tuning in and the likes and the subscribes and all the comments. So thank you so much for sort of rocking with us all season. And Full Court Press will be back in some capacity next week. So this is not the last show, but we're running out of games to talk about, Matt. So we're getting toward the end. It's been a great season. Again, you can find Matt on Twitter at Matthew Winnick and on Basket Under Review. So check him out there. He did a full preview for the South region. So if you're looking for more thoughts there, that's up on the Basket Review page. We are out. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.